Hello, Reject Nation. I'm Greg Alba.
And I'm John Humphrey.
We just came out of AD ASTRA and IMAX. We got these cool little pins here that they gave us. AD ASTRA, that was my favorite part of the movie, is when they said, what are we, some kind of AD ASTRA? It's pretty late at night right now. Excuse especially me for looking pretty tired. I remember watching the trailers for this film. I remember feeling like they were, doing what they can in the marketing to make it look a lot more exciting and, pulse pounding. They even released a clip on the 20th Century Fox channel of the
space pirate scene.
Yeah, the space pirate scene. We have both said numerous times that this is probably going to be much slower moving
contemplative
sci-fi
drama.
film that's a lot more heady than what they're advertising it as. Fortunately, I think there's actually a pretty good amount of scenes that are actually pretty thrilling, are intense. That space pirate scene is actually much longer than what's released online.
Yeah.
And I thought that was great. Overall, though, I was kind of concerned that we might run into like an Annihilation situation where we walk out going, oh, okay, that was really well done, really well made. I'm pretty lost, though, on what the hell that movie was about.
Very abstract, kind of obtuse.
And while it certainly has those kind of layers, I actually think the movie's pretty digestible. It's pretty tangible.
Yeah, I mean, this movie kind of falls on a point in a spectrum because, there have been a lot of these types of space movies lately, and this movie strikes, I think, a really nice balance of science fiction, human dramatic emotion, and then just immediacy.
Yeah.
I almost wonder if maybe at the back of my mind, I just feel like maybe this could do a little better than expected just because, it is so immediate, and James Gray said his goal was to make the most realistic depiction of space travel, and because of that, I feel like, the movie does have a lot of rise and fall in intensity, even if it's not a traditional action space movie.
Yes. It does a good job at having a strong emotional core to latch onto. I mean, while I'm bringing that up, Brad Pitt in this film is awesome. When the movie was done, I said, I love me some dark Brad Pitt.
Somber Brad.
I love somber Brad. He has a lot of layers to this very subtle performance. It's interesting to get two performances out of Brad Pitt in this year that are so different, just showcasing like, man, this guy really can act. You got that one with Cliff Booth in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which is very charismatic, funny,
kind of carefree almost.
Yeah, and then you have a person here who is essentially empty.
The exact opposite guy.
Who has like this hidden rage within him.
Yeah.
The movie does go on a very personal journey with him without being overly expositional or in your face about it. I love his arc in the film, and I think Brad Pitt's incredibly subtle performance is something that I hope is not overlooked.
Yeah.
Because this is the kind of film that's easy to just look at the visuals and the tone to it all, with the themes and everything the movie's touched on, which is all actually pretty fantastic. Really have no complaints about this movie.
Yeah, seriously.
It's all great, but the joke I've been making is this is the kind of movie where everything gets nominated except for Brad Pitt. And then I watch this and I'm like, oh man, I really hope Brad Pitt is not overlooked for this film, because he is great. But yeah, the visuals, this is probably the best shot looking movie I've seen all year. I was so surprised to learn that the movie's roughly budgeted between 80 to 90 million, somewhere there. 20 minutes into this, I was watching it going, was this movie made for like $200 million? This is crazy what they've done.
It's a very convincing space travel movie that spans a lot because, it's set in the near future, so it's a little more advanced than we are now.
2021.
Yes, exactly. It's a totally different world. But yeah, it's like everything that's sci-fi is kind of well within reach, it feels like. And it does feel like it spans a lot, even though the story itself is, very straightforward, very linear. And Brad Pitt just carries the whole thing with this very intimate performance that's backed up by just a really well-paced, it's like you brought up the editing, it's like the flow of scene to scene is great, and the visual motifs that carry that are great. For a movie that is so heady and is so emotional, it is also not really that long. Like, it doesn't feel like it's outstaying its welcome. It doesn't feel like it crawls. It has a really nice pace about it to where you almost never think about it.
The designs are a great mix of just, sometimes stuff is like obviously CGI, but there were certain moments where I had to question whether or not I was looking at CGI or practical effects, because there are some beautiful practical effects that are captured in this movie. And I think the cinematography is so good. I love how the lighting always was like illuminated by whatever the environment was. It was constantly reflective. I mean, you watch the trailer and you see like a random mirage of colors, and I don't want to to, ruin exactly where this scene takes place and where this scene takes place. The space travel movies, they go around a lot.
Yeah.
And also another cool thing about it with it being a space travel film is that there are some things that when you look at the plot points of this film that might seem like a random thing because they do a lot of universe building. And the word is world building, but they do a lot of universe building.
They just flesh out this version of the world.
Yeah, of like if we got to this point in technology with space travel, what will we do with the world
and with
and the other planets? What I love about it is that each one that even might seem a little bit random, it always is used in service to advance the emotional development of Brad Pitt's character.
Yeah.
And the end of it all. If like you look at every scene it's like I don't want to spoil any of it because there are some scenes where you're like, what the hell's going on? Yeah. And then when that scene ends, you go, oh, it's actually done this as an effect to Brad Pitt's character, which ultimately goes to serve his arc.
And going also toward that, again, most realistic depiction of space travel possible. It's like some of those situations aren't necessarily essential, but they are things that you might run into, and as they're placed in this movie, I found them to be appropriate because they're not overly frivolous. There's so much beautiful color, there's so much beautiful design, and it's all composed in such a way that it's not more or less in your face than it ever needs to be. It just feels very natural with the way it unfolds its world and its different aesthetics and the way the characters occupy it all. And there are some muddy little character beats that are very human and that ring really wide, even though the movie isn't necessarily going out of its way to hit you with a bunch of lessons.
Yeah.
There's a lot that's played in people's faces, and there is a narration throughout the movie, but even that I thought added a lot of character and a lot of connectability to Brad Pitt, especially.
I love the sound design in this film. When I saw the clip they released online, I don't know how many clips they've released, but when I saw the one clip of the space pirate thing, I remember thinking, like, this sound design is brilliant. And then watching it in theaters and watching so many more different sequences, I don't quite know how to explain it. So if you look at that space pirate scene that they did release, in a normal chase fight moment, you would hear a lot of explosions and a lot of gunfire, a lot more noise, but they had a sort of like, whatever the sound space is, which is nothing, to like muffle it within the atmosphere.
I don't know what
it's a weird balance.
Like, yeah, it's almost like anything that has a major impact especially kind of breaks that barrier with a muffled sort of, and even other things too, it almost sounds like you're hearing them through comms when it's appropriate. Yeah, there's a lot of really beautiful sound design, both in the stuff that's happening on screen with communications and also just the sounds that percolate in the background to raise tension, or in moments where like actual instruments are beeping and that's used to raise tension. Everything in this movie really feels placed with a purpose.
And with sound, there's also some just beautiful music in this film too. Sometimes it does, a little bit of that synth sci-fi music that you sort of expect in a film like this, but for the most part, it feels rather like traditional operatic kind of or orchestral music that I really appreciated in this movie. I don't know who composed the film. Let's flash his name on screen because literally every technical side of this film I hope does get an Oscar nomination because it is one of the best composed films I've seen in a long time. With that in mind, I really hope more people check this out. This isn't some established franchise, some built-in IP already. People constantly complain about lack of original films in Hollywood and da-da-da-da-da. This is a pretty big budget movie, but I guess this would fall under mid-budget based off what we have now, because in order for a movie to be a success, it needs to make like hundreds of millions of dollars, right? I really would encourage people to go check this out as like support an original piece like this, which is so beautifully done. I have no idea how the audience score is going to be on this movie because if you like these kind of films, you could probably watch the trailers and pick up on it's probably going to be a little bit more of the tone poem that this film is. If you don't really like those kind of movies, I feel like you might be a little bit
you might,
because it still deals with a lot of things that we've seen in other space movies. There's been a lot of space movies as in the past few years that really deal with astronauts kind of using the space travel as a form to deal with their grief in a lot of ways, and I think this does something very different with that.
It explores it and gives a payoff to it in a different way, and I do think that as a space movie goes, I mean, yes, this is a little more emotional, a little bit more surreal, cerebral, but I do think that if you look at a lot of the other ones that have come, it's not as big and blockbuster and romantic as, say, an Interstellar, but it's also not so much of an art film that I don't think people could get into it. So if you are open to a, you know, film, like a dramatic film, but that has a lot of really breathtaking and intriguing science fiction as well to it, I think this could be a great bridger of that gap between a prestige film and something audiences could latch onto if they're open to it.
It's very much a science fiction movie, and it seemed like every choice they made was to calculate it with what is the most realistic probability of how this would go down, though, even though this is totally fictitious. What's the most realistic way to do this?
And how can we raise intensity through that?
Exactly, and how can we still tell a compelling emotional journey even if the audience doesn't fully understand some of the space, you know, jargon being thrown around?
Which ultimately isn't the point anyway.
It's not the point. Yeah, that's why it works. It's an interesting movie because when it starts off, it seems like it's a little bit more on the subtle sci-fi side. Then as the film keeps progressing, it gets a little bit bigger, it gets a little bit more heady, but I never felt I lost sight of connectivity with the film.
No.
So yeah, I highly recommend this movie. I think it's everything you need this movie to succeed on. It greatly succeeds, so I go check it out.
Yeah, I really thought the more I think about it, I thought they really nailed this.
Yeah. Well, did you see Ad Astra? What's your favorite space movie that is not a Star Trek or Star Wars or 2001: A Space Odyssey? Don't worry, there's still plenty of options to choose from. You guys can subscribe to The Real Rejects. Click that notification bell to get notified whenever we got a video up. You can check us out on Patreon. We do weekly Q&As, TV show reactions, stream-along, sync up. And there are several shows that we cover where you can sync up with us or have a reaction highlights cut. He does music video coverage weekly. I like to end this with a patron of the day shout out to a lovely woman named Victoria Huntley. You're very much into cosplaying. I know you're gearing up to get ready for an awesome Halloween costume. What I wanted to suggest was that you cosplay as an astronaut, and then your fiance cosplays as an astronaut as well. And then you guys can go out into some type of wilderness enough where the stars are really felt, and then you can act like two astronaut lovers who found yourself in space
on a distant planet
with keeping the outfits on. You make love, and then you give birth to an alien baby. And then you decide, should we kill this baby?
Is this an abomination?
And then you let it grow into an adult.
Because you can't kill it.
And you can't, because even though it looks like a freaking monster,
it's got teeth and tentacles and it hates you.
You can't kill it.
No,
it's yours.
baby.
And then it murders you guys. This is like a 25-year role play I'm talking about, but it's going to be worth it.
So many fetishes.